Hey, today's video will be focusing on a rather morbid, adult, and serious topic. If you're not ready to think about anything serious today or confront anything, then I would recommend you find a different video. This video will be confronting the matter of your own death. So, if you're not ready to do that today, I would recommend you to tune out. But if you don't think that I'm being serious, I'm reviewing a book today. I'm not sure if you can see it well, but it's called How to Die. You can see that I am a little bit hesitant, as I have been with other things, to address this, but it's an important topic. It's very taboo, but it's important to think about. It is possibly an inescapable fact, at least some of us think, that we have a limited time on this earth, and that there is a start and finish point. I'd like to say as a preface that this video in no way promotes self-harm or suicide. If you are feeling like you may do something rash, something dangerous, I would please recommend you to visit a hotline, some of which will be in the description. The Stoics, and most philosophers in general, or philosophies in general, have some sort of consciousness that death is a thing that happens. Seneca, that dude there, that's a illustration of him in the tub where he was forced to commit suicide. The Stoics knew that since death is an inescapable part of life, that, just as everything else with life, it's important to approach and try to do in the best and most moral way that you can. This doesn't advertise dying early or anything like that. This is just a guide as to how to go peacefully into the night and be moral, be good to your loved ones, maintain good friendships, and do everything of the sort. The fact that Seneca did commit suicide is a little bit uncomfortable for me having to film this video, though I would advise you to know that that was a situation which he was forced into. He was a tutor for the Emperor Nero, who had ordered him to die. And in those days, executions happened mainly by forcing people to kill themselves, instead of having him be beheaded or hung. They would give you poison or a knife and that's how you did it. Nero wasn't very kind to his family members or his teacher, so that's that. If you're interested, this book does have at the end Tacitus's account of Seneca's death, and it's rather gruesome, but many things are gruesome. Seneca wrote a lot on death, partly because he was very interested in a philosophical practice or idea called memento mori, and that's remembering that you're going to die. That's remembering that your life has a limit, and that since there is an end point and you have limited time, you should get about doing the right thing as soon as possible. The writings collated in this book by James S. Rom are from various texts from Seneca. They are from his letters to Lucilius, his most famous writings, some of his essays, and also his personal letters, all things which are related to dying, aging, and approaching the end of life. Something interesting about this book, aside from the very interesting interpolations of the author, is also that I shall show you. The second half of the book is the original Latin of all of the texts. So if you're a bit of a smarty and you can read ancient Latin, I would be very impressed if you read this. Of course, I only read the English translation. The collator who gathered all these texts together, James S. Rom, I believe, he provides these extremely interesting interpolations between the paragraphs and sections of writings. If there's a name or a place, any noun really, or any situation which is important for you to know about, he will add in appropriate detail, and having proper knowledge of everything written in the text does quite dramatically improve how effective they are at communicating their message. I've read all of the accounts in this book before in different forms, but this is probably the most effective that I have seen them come out due to the interpolations of the author. Not only that, I'll show you another thing. He also provides valuable endnotes or footnotes throughout the text. So, if you're to read this, I would really recommend you to keep a finger at the back of the book. And while you read, there will be an annotation, there will be a reference, there will be a number amongst the text that isn't purely the interpolations of the author, but more detail which is at the back. And this does very dramatically increase the reader experience of the book. I've been interested in Stoicism for about 5 or 6 years, and I didn't know a considerable amount of stuff in the book, and some things I did but didn't link together because I'm not a historian, and thus I truly think that this is quite a masterful collection of writings, put together in a way in which I think is truly helpful for the subject matter. Seneca, just like some of the other Stoics, had a rather large experience considering death, not only because of their philosophical practice of memento mori, but also because they had quite bad health problems. Many of the notable Stoics faced family members passing away. Marcus Aurelius faced quite a considerable amount, or possibly even all of his biological children, to various diseases, which I can't name off the top of my head. And Seneca experienced some sort of respiratory illness, which seems to have quite vividly impacted him, and you can definitely see it when you read his writings that he is struggling. But he still manages to love and to care and to do the right thing, even amidst pain. And in the end, his illness is not the thing which kills him, which is quite interesting to consider, as in most of his writings he assumes that that is what's going to happen. But Nero ended up going insane. Seneca goes about conditioning himself and the reader to the normality of death quite frequently, and he spends a significant amount of time reminding you that it's normal and shouldn't be feared. I shall read you a quote that I have randomly opened up in the book, which luckily for me supports my point. So he's quoting someone else when he says, "Stop hoping to bend the fates of the gods by prayer." The Stoics were very deterministic. They believed that what is going to happen is very fixed, and thus the inevitability of existence means that you should worry a lot less, as if you know that something is going to happen, you will expect it to happen, and therefore the negative emotions arising from surprise won't manifest. And the Stoics thought that anger and fear were both reactions of surprise. Those fates are determined and fixed, and guided by a great and eternal necessity. You'll go to the same place that all go. What's so strange about that? You were born under this law. It happened to your father, your mother, your ancestors, everyone before you and everyone after you. An unbreakable sequence which no one can alter. Binds and tows all things. How great a throng of those yet to die will follow your footsteps. How great a crowd will accompany you. You would bear up more bravely, I imagine, if many thousands of things were dying along with you. In fact, many thousands, both men and animals, are giving up the ghost in all kinds of ways at the very moment when you are hesitating to die. Don't you think you are going to arrive someday where you were always headed? No journey is without an endpoint. At first, it's a little bit morbid, but after a while you see a strange sort of dark beauty to it. I believe that if you look at Gothic architecture, or if you look at traditional memento mori art, that the purpose that this aesthetically is meant to generate in your soul is both disturbing and beautiful. Traditionally, memento mori is illustrated by a skull to represent death, an hourglass to represent time, and a rose or a heart to represent life. If you see someone with a tattoo of that, you'll now know what it is. So there you go. And it is meant to render those feelings in you. There's meant to be beauty in the heart or the rose, and there's meant to be something morbid and sometimes even melancholy in the skull, as a lot of the times you'll see a skeleton propped up in a melancholic stance, and the hourglass may be to give you a sense of urgency or unease or impending action. It's to remind you that this will happen. Memento mori is seen basically everywhere, and I would counsel you to remember that just as dark allows you to see the outline of shapes and tone and texture with your eyes, so does death bring value to life. If you had forever to do what you needed to do, it's likely that that's how long you'd need to do it. Thank you for listening to this rather grim episode, and I hope that even when facing the abyss, and the abyss staring back, that at least it stared back in a way which was not too unrelaxing. Thank you for having a rest, and a pause, and a break, and good night.